Best buys are the little kids who bring their parents to the show. If mom and dad come, mom and dad have a pocket full of money, and the little kids get whatever they want.
I want a shirt with some inside the kid. You want a what? It says kid.
I need more money. You want my money?
Welcome, fellow KISS fans. Welcome to It's All For You Demon, celebrating the fun of being a KISS fan. And as life happens, we may have a different outro to this video. We'll just see. I'm filming while life is in progress, shall you say. Hence, Pee-wee is acting the fool. But tonight, you and I are going to discuss some fun variations of one of my favorite tour books, quite possibly my all-time favorite tour book. Hence the Dynasty shirt in the corner there. We're going to talk the 3 of the 4 variations of the Dynasty World Tour Book. Before we go into the Dynasty Tour Book, of course, we want to nostalgia. And what I love the most about the Dynasty era is its grotesque silliness. This was an era when you had the band firing on all cylinders, 77, 78, looking badass, in the most recognizable incarnation of the band. You cannot mistake those 77, 78 outfits. That stage, those outfits, that is KISS. And then you bring in Phantom of the Park, which, more than Paul Lynde Halloween Special, opens up the floodgates to a much younger audience. And then you bring in the solo albums, which, beyond Ace and Paul, Gene and Peter's solo album are not fan favorites, thus confusing the fan base even more, especially the older audience. Adding to the fact that at the time the band was merchandising like no other: comic books, dolls, JCPenney's clothes, belt buckles, things that gravitate towards 7-year-olds in 1977 versus 15-year-olds who were enjoying Alive. Dynasty is released, KISS goes disco, and the outfits are very Las Vegas. I can understand why a lot of the older fans split at this moment, and that's why I kind of like it. Not that the older fans split, but I like it because it's such a crazy era. It is over-the-top excess, and you just are seeing the machine go over the roller coaster hill straight down, and you're just watching almost a train wreck, and it's kind of beautiful, and it's kind of fun, and it's so over the top. I love that era. And this is why I love this tour book so much, because this, to me, would have been the one tour book that the kids could not wait to see. The fan base was probably used to those 77, 78 era costumes. KISS hadn't really changed much since Destroyer. Costumes changed a little, stage changed a little, but from Destroyer through the solo albums, KISS was KISS. This was completely different. And I live in an old neighborhood. My house was built in '55, so in the mid-70s, this neighborhood would have been in its prime era of up and bumping. And when I take Pee-wee on walks at night, sometimes I'll walk past houses that just look like they haven't really changed since 1979, and I think, man, I wonder if any kids from this neighborhood gathered at the picnic table in the backyard of this house to look at someone's Dynasty Tour Book. Like, phones rang. Hey, I got the Dynasty Tour Book last night. Let's meet at so-and-so's house and flip through it. And just the magic of that on a summer day, man, discovering new KISS. I think we take for granted in the social media era when a new photo is released, it's shared 10 million times. Back then it was word of mouth and backyard picnic tables. That is magic and badass. So tonight, let's take a look at the 3 variations of the Dynasty Tour Book. There's 4 in total. 1 we're probably never gonna get. And that would be the Return of KISS Tour Book. This is extremely rare, 16 pages. Rumored to only be passed out at one show, Savannah, Georgia, although possibly June 22nd in Columbia, South Carolina. The rumors are the decision to pull the tour book was the botched cover Gene's face has airbrushing that's not so good. And also, inside of the tour book were a list of tour dates, many of which ended up getting canceled. Now, the second version of the Dynasty Tour Book that we're going to talk about today ended up selling out super fast June 15th through 17th. And so when it came to that June 19th Savannah show, there were no tour books to sell. So instead of not selling any tour books, rumor has it they sold these Return of KISS tour books, back stock, which should not have been sold. And out there somewhere, some lucky kid had it, may still have it. And I think anyone who owns it now, they don't even let it get photographed. Pretty hard piece to find, almost a Powerball win if you find it, but cool nonetheless. Version 2 of the tour book is exactly like the Return of KISS tour book, minus the cover and minus the tour dates on the inside. This is the version that took me the longest to find because a lot of times when people post these, they won't post all the pictures, and you have to ensure for the second version that your tour book opens to the pinball ad. And then to also make this the second version, there are no live shots in this tour book. Every time you go to a member's page, it is only studio shots, and there's a lot of white space there. There's Paul, discography page, you gotta love those. Ace. I mean, this is just like a designing nightmare. I don't know why they would even consider all that white space. That's so weird. And then at the end you have the Paul Stanley ad. Second version. Third version, which is also my favorite, because you can see whoever owned this actually wrote down the dates that they saw this tour. September 14th, 1979, 8 p.m. That's the kind of sugar that Papa likes. That is the nostalgia I love. Anytime a KISS fan touches a piece of merch and leaves their mark, that's KISS fan history, and I love it. Third version opens up to the coolest picture ever of Gene spitting blood. That is absolutely the most amazing photo of Gene ever. There will never be a better photo of Gene. That is the greatest photo of Gene. I may say with a quick tie to this photo of Gene from the Black Music Life. Version 3, then we open to the pinball ad. So that's your clue of version 3. And then we continue again with the designing nightmare. All these white spaces. I don't get it. No live shots, just a lot of white space. And probably the most fun tour book ever, but
strange and wondrous.
And then version 4, this was my very first Dynasty Tour Book. And actually, the Dynasty Tour Book is one of the very first tour books I ever saw. Danny and I, over at Brett's house, Brett's older brother Highland, saw KISS 77 at Kemper and 79 at Kemper. And he had both tour books. The Dynasty Tour Book was probably the first KISS tour book I ever flipped through when I was 15. And this was my first ad of the Dynasty Tour Book. Once again, opens to the coolest picture of Gene ever. Then opens to the pinball ad. And then opens to less white space now. More studio shots and live shots. A very cool shot of Gene that Dan remade in New York City at the very location. Gene, Paul, discography, Ace, Peter. Can we pause for a moment and talk about how cool the Peter Criss photo is with the naked lady and the blood? That's pretty badass considering they had such a young child audience at the time. That's a lot of fun. Probably one of my favorite Peter pictures as well. And then you have the Gene Simmons Sun ad. Gene Simmons can play any bass he wants. He chooses Sun. And then the last little collage of Peter, version 4. So to me, as a Dynasty collector, it was fun to get all 3 variations of the Dynasty Tour Book that I could. Possibly, I won't say never, but the odds of getting the first one are pretty good. I'm going to say they're pretty good. The odds of getting the first one are good, just hasn't happened yet. There you go. That's positive thinking. The 3 versions I was happy to get. I'm not a variation collector. I don't go for variations of albums or tour books like a lot of people did the End of the Road. I think there's like 10, 11 versions of the End of the Road tour book. I never got into that. To me, if I have one, I'm content. But as a Dynasty collector, I did want all 3 of these. They finally showed up in the Wax Night house. And so I decided, I know we've talked about this before, but I decided we would complete our talk. The 3 variations of the 4 Dynasty World Tour Book. Thank you for hanging with us tonight and waxing a little rock and roll nostalgia with us here in the Wax Night house. And this little guy, my wife found him at the thrift store in the parking lot. Took him to check for microchip. He is microchipped. Contacted the owner. The owner does not want him, so obviously he was dumped, which is a good reminder. Be good to your babies. Spay, neuter, microchip. Don't be an asshole and dump your dog. This little guy may stay with us. We might name him Strutter because he really struts about the place. So, like he owns it. We might name him Strutter. We might have a new dog. Pee-wee might have a good friend. She needs to warm up a little bit. But, we'll see. This is life. Don't be an asshole. Don't dump your dogs. Animals are for life. We will talk to you soon, and we might need to do a little Thom Dust action. An outro with Thom Dust version of Strutter. We will talk to you soon.